Imagine this. You're standing in a grocery store, and you've got two nearly identical jars of pasta sauce in your hands. One is $3.49, the other is $3.99. They're basically the same. You know they're basically the same. And yet, you're still standing there, 5 minutes later, reading the ingredient labels like they hold the secrets of the universe. Meanwhile, a woman behind you is trying to reach the shelf and you are completely, blissfully unaware, lost somewhere inside your own brain running a cost-benefit analysis on tomato paste. Sound familiar? Maybe it wasn't pasta sauce. Maybe it was a flight you refreshed 47 times hoping the price would drop by $12. Or a jacket you left in your cart for 3 weeks, came back to, then abandoned again. Or maybe it was something bigger, a job offer, an investment, a major purchase, and you spend so long weighing every possible outcome that by the time you finally made a decision, you were completely exhausted and low-key resented the whole thing. Here's what most people assume about this kind of behavior. They think it's just about being careful with money, being responsible, being smart. And sure, on the surface, that's what it looks like. But when you peel back the psychology of it, what's actually happening is something far more interesting, and honestly, far more human than simple frugality. Because the people who overthink every financial decision aren't just being cautious. Their brains are doing something very specific, very deep, and once you understand it, you'll never look at your own money habits the same way again. Let's start with something called loss aversion. Back in the 1970s, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky discovered something that turned the world of economics on its head. Losing something feels roughly twice as painful as gaining something of equivalent value feels good. So losing $20 doesn't just cancel out finding $20, it hits harder, it stings more. Your brain, neurologically speaking, is wired to treat potential losses as threats, and it activates the same stress response systems it would use if you were, say, being chased by something. Over a $3.99 jar of pasta sauce. Your nervous system does not know the difference. It genuinely cannot tell. This is why overthinking financial decisions so often feels physically uncomfortable. It's not just anxiety in the abstract. Your body is literally responding to perceived danger. The racing thoughts, the inability to just pick one, the endless what ifs. All of that is your brain trying to protect you from the pain of a wrong choice, which is kind of beautiful in a completely exhausting way. But here's where it gets even more layered. A lot of chronic financial overthinkers aren't just afraid of losing money, they're afraid of losing status, security, or identity. For many people, money is never really about money. It's about what money represents: safety, control, proof that you're doing life correctly. Think about someone who grew up in a household where money was scarce or unpredictable. For them, every financial decision isn't just a transaction, it's a referendum on their stability. Their subconscious is always asking, is this safe? Are we okay? Are we going to be okay? And no amount of spreadsheet analysis can fully quiet that question, because it was never really a financial question to begin with. Psychologists call this the scarcity mindset, and the research on it is genuinely startling. Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir in their book, Scarcity, found that when people feel financially stressed, even when they objectively have enough, their cognitive bandwidth actually narrows. They become hyper-focused on immediate financial concerns, which makes it harder to think long-term, and paradoxically leads to more decision fatigue and worse choices. So, the more anxiously you overthink, the harder good decision-making becomes. It's a loop, a tight, frustrating, very human loop. Now add to this something called analysis paralysis. When we have too many options or too much information, our brain doesn't get sharper, it gets slower. Psychologist Barry Schwartz wrote an entire book about this called The Paradox of Choice, arguing that more options don't lead to more satisfaction, they lead to more doubt, more regret, and a sneaky little feeling that no matter what you chose, the other thing was probably better. Financial decisions in the modern world are absolutely drowning in options. Which savings account? Which investment platform? Which credit card rewards program? Comparing, researching, reading reviews, at some point the brain tips from informed into overwhelmed, and then it just stalls, like a computer with too many tabs open. Here's a metaphor I love. Imagine your decision-making capacity is a battery. Every time you evaluate an option, every time you run a comparison, read a review, reconsider a choice, you drain a little bit of that battery. Overthinkers, especially around money, often arrive at the moment of decision completely drained, and a drained brain defaults to one of two things: either a frantic, impulsive choice just to end the discomfort, or complete avoidance. Neither of these is actually what the person wanted. Neither reflects their real values or intentions. The overthinking process, meant to protect them, ends up hijacking them. And let's talk about perfectionism, because it's almost always lurking somewhere in this story. Many people who overthink financial decisions are perfectionists who've quietly applied their perfectionism to money without realizing it. They believe, somewhere beneath conscious awareness, that there is a correct choice, a best choice, an optimal choice that will prevent any future regret. And the job of all that thinking is to find it. But financial decisions rarely have a definitively correct answer. They have trade-offs, they have uncertainties. They exist in a world that doesn't cooperate with the desire for perfect outcomes. And when a perfectionist brain collides with that reality, the result is more thinking, more doubt, more revision, an endless loop in search of a certainty that simply isn't there. What's remarkable, though, and this is where I want you to really sit with something, is that in most cases, the overthinking itself is an act of care. People who agonize over financial decisions are, in their own way, trying so hard to do right by themselves and the people they love. They're not weak, they're not broken, they're actually highly engaged, deeply conscientious people whose protective instincts have just been turned up a little too loud. There's an intelligence in the worry, even when the worry has overstayed its welcome. The shift, when it comes, usually isn't about thinking less, it's about learning to trust that imperfect decisions made with good information and good intentions are almost always survivable, and often they turn out just fine. Research in decision science consistently shows that we're terrible at predicting how much we'll regret a choice, and we're also terrible at predicting how well we'll adapt to outcomes we didn't want. Your brain overestimates the reward of the perfect choice and the pain of the wrong one, which means a lot of the energy spent in the overthinking spiral is spent protecting you from something that, statistically speaking, you'd probably handle just fine. So, the next time you catch yourself on the third hour of comparing two nearly identical options, try to get a little curious instead of critical. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of losing here? What does this decision represent to me beyond the dollars? Because often the real conversation isn't between option A and option B, it's between the part of you that wants to move forward and the part of you that isn't sure it's safe to. That's a conversation worth having. And honestly, the fact that you're even asking these questions about your habits, your patterns, your inner life puts you miles ahead of someone who never stops to look. If this resonated with you, I'd love to know. What's a financial decision you've massively overthought? Drop it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people are right there with you. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology behind the everyday decisions your brain is quietly making on your behalf, stick around. There's a lot more where this came from.